because there is so much history here. I have gone to so many places all around the world, within our country, but for some reason, I haven't been to the South. And so, but I haven't been to the South to lecture, and so I especially wanted to come to Mississippi, and I hope you recognize all of the history that's here. Do you recognize all the history that's here? Yes. Okay. Did you know that each, and let me also say to you, dynamic drama club. That was so amazing. I can't wait to share it with my friends. That was so amazing. I thank you so much. Very heartwarming. Did you know that each and every hour in the United States, someone commits a hate crime? That at least 8 African American, 4 Muslim, 3 white, 3 gay, 3 Jewish, and 1 Latino persons become hate crime victims every single day. Did you know that people in your age group commit the majority of hate crimes in the United States each year? According to the latest available FBI crime report statistics, 1/2 of all of the hate crimes in this nation are committed by people between the ages of 15 and 24. 15 and 24. And so I ask, what have you been taught? Hatred is a learned behavior. We teach our children to hate, and if we teach them to hate someone else, then in actuality, we are teaching them to hate themselves. We are in one of the greatest countries in the world, with the latest forms of entertainment, movies, sports, video games. We have access to networking with individuals from all around the world through social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And if anyone wants to follow me on Twitter, I am on Twitter too, at Ilyasah Shabazz. I think you know how to spell my name. And so I ask, what is your value system? Your purpose? We hear the slogan, Black Life Matters. How specifically does your life matter? I read a poll conducted on adolescents who were asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And their answer was quite simple, and I quote, rich. Not rich in service, not rich in helping anyone, but just rich. And it touched me. What happened? What happened to our humanity, to our compassion, to our purpose? What happened? Nelson Mandela said, when a man has done what he considers to be his duty for his people and his country, he can then rest in peace. Survival of the fittest. Stand for something or get out of the way. Each one of you has the power to be dynamic. My father, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, Malcolm X, was just in his 20s when the world would learn of him, just a few years older than many of you here. In the 1950s and 60s, Malcolm stood up against the injustices around him. He redefined the American civil rights movement to include a human rights agenda. While young people were organizing demonstrations, protests, marches, and sit-ins seeking a quality of life for themselves and their families, integrating schools and public housings, Malcolm said, we demand our human rights as your brother. We demand our inalienable human rights ordained by God. And so he did not fear man, he only feared God. And that is what gave him the courage to do the work that he did, to make that significant sacrifice without asking for a penny in return for himself or his family. He circled the globe tirelessly in search of solutions to the human condition that would oppress its fellow brother, sister, and children. He had less access than what most of you students have today. He persisted to unite Africa and her descendants in the diaspora towards a singular international struggle for freedom, justice, and peace. And that is to say, whether you were from the East Side, the West Side, New York, or Mississippi, Jamaica, Haiti, Puerto Rico, Brazil, the Congo, or Johannesburg, that the struggle against brown people was one and the same. And he provided a blueprint for any oppressed group seeking equality and justice. This uncompromising dedication made Brother Malcolm an international figure by the time he was in his mid-30s. And today's social climate must remind this generation of the realities Malcolm, Martin, Medgar, Mandela, and many of their contemporaries confronted. However, they sought to resolve them. They gave their lives for that, for you. Young people, this is your time. Your time to invest in yourselves with knowledge, with purpose, with power, real power. It is your responsibility to take the baton from your foreparents and continue the legacy of dynamic leadership. Sometimes we complain that we no longer have effective leaders, but you must look in the mirror, ladies and gentlemen, and understand that you are those leaders that you're looking for. It was the founder of Black History Week, which of course became Black History Month, and we hope will be just an ongoing history, that we don't have to limit ourselves to a week or a month or something, but that it will be inclusive in our curriculum. And we hope that some of you historians or educators or whatever it is you're studying, that you will make sure that the curriculum is inclusive. It doesn't matter if you're only in America. Wherever there is an educational curriculum, that the curriculum includes those of your foreparents, because 9 times out of 10, wherever there is civilization, there were people of the diaspora. But it was the founder of Black History Week, renowned historian Carter G. Woodson, who said in the 1950s that the biggest race was to see who could gain control of young people's minds. You are powerful beyond measure, and you must own it.
Yes.
I'd like to ask the organizers of this week-long celebration to please stand. Let's see, I think it is, who helped plan this today?
We got, they're on the outside, still working.
Okay.
Mario Musco,
Dr. Chapman,
yes.
I'd like to thank you for your colleagues. Thank you for your dedication, for organizing forums as this that serve to engage, enlighten, and empower us in our community. And I ask that you please join me in giving the organizers a round of applause. Don't go too far with me, please. I'm honored, to this great academic institution, Jackson State University, to the administrators, faculty, students, and to the local community. I'm honored to be your guest this morning as a daughter of Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz. They had 6 daughters. I'm happy to be here in your hometown, Rena Evers. You know I love you and your family, and so grateful for your sacrifice. The sacrifice of your father, God bless you, the sacrifice of your mother. Yeah. I know that your mother, my mother, and Aunt Coretta were the three M's, and your mother, God bless her, right? So we salute you for just carrying on. not quite 3 years old when my father was politically assassinated in 1965. And so my memories of him, as I recount in my first book, Growing Up X, are flickering images and moments spent with him. Like most children, I was very much in love with my father. He was very tall, and I usually joke about this. He was a little over 6'4", but oftentimes when I go to museums or I see these other portrayals of my father, they usually have a man who's about 4'10", right? And I don't have anything against, of course, men who are 4'10", 4'8", 9. But Malcolm was 6'4", almost 6'5". I like to give a little extra. And so he was a very tall man. And so, again, young people, whatever work you go into, you have to make sure that you record history accurately, that you make the portrayals correct. Malcolm was not 4'9". I went out with someone who was about that a long time ago. But Malcolm was not 4'9", so I don't have any, I'm not discriminating against any man in here who's under 5 feet. We love you all. Okay, but Malcolm was 6'4" and a little bit, so we just want to make sure that we get that correct. And he had these big, curly, white teeth that would pierce through an enormously beautiful smile. I remember his voice with such authority as he called my name, Ilyasah. And my mother told me when I was a little girl, I didn't quite listen to everyone, but when my father called me, I'd stop in my tracks to give my attention to my dad. My mother often spoke of our special ritual, and of course, I have 5 sisters, so depending on which sister you talk to, each, any of you who have many siblings, depending on which sister you talk to, everyone has their special ritual. But in the evenings, I'd wait for my father at the front door. He'd come home, get situated, pick me up in one arm while balancing a plate of oatmeal cookies my mother made and a stack of papers in the other. He'd take me into the den to watch the evening news as he'd read through stacks and stacks of papers. He read everything that you can imagine, and we would share these cookies. So after my father was killed, we stayed at the family home of Sidney Poitier. How many of you are familiar with Sidney Poitier? Sidney Poitier was a very famous, or she still is actually, very famous actor. And so, it doesn't matter what your career is, you can still be an activist and a singer, an activist and an actor, an activist and a professor, whatever it is you do. And so I would find my way to their front door and look out the window for my father. And my mother couldn't explain death to her toddler. So she began taking a cookie and breaking it in half and leaving it for me on a plate at the front door. And I'd get the cookie, but my father never came home. And so these cookies came to be a sweet reminder of precious times spent with my father. And when my mother first shared the story, my girlfriends and I looked at each other stunned, because those who knew me would give me cookies or cookie jars for holiday gifts. They knew I had a distinct connection with cookies, and my mother had just explained why. But as you grow older, young ladies, you come to the realization that a woman's hips can no longer tolerate cookies. That's why I don't want you to go too far with my jacket. Because I need to put that jacket on when I work my way back to my seat. So young ladies, eat all the cookies you want now while you're young. That's right. They have gluten-free, so it doesn't cause you to expand so fast. But just please, eat some cookies for me. One of my mentees found a beautiful photo. It was a picture of me and my dad. Me as an infant staring into his eyes, and I can't tell you how many times a day and night I look at this photo and just wonder, what was he thinking? How was he feeling? And what did he say to me? One of my favorite speeches of my father's is the debate at Oxford University. It's my favorite because he's not directly reacting to a violent situation. You see, oftentimes when we see Malcolm, we see him being very passionate, and people think that he was so angry. He was reacting to all of the violence that was around him. Yeah. He was reacting to nonviolent protesters. having dogs sicked on them, fire extinguishers, being beat by bully clubs. He had such a profound reaction because he had such compassion, care, and concern for his people. So Oxford University debate is one of my favorites because he's free to engage in dialogue with his favorite group of audience, young people, students, on their journey of self-discovery, eager to learn about society, history, race relations, injustice issues, their leadership roles in achieving peace, liberties, and freedoms. And he quotes William Shakespeare's Hamlet to both enlighten and engage the students. He said, "To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the minds to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them." He shared Shakespeare's perception. There is a battle being imposed on our youth today. Young unarmed black citizens brutalized, shot, and even killed by police officers under questionable circumstances. This is real. This is real. And it's going to continue unless you do something to stop it. The judicial response to protests by the people has been a string of grand jury non-indictments and acquittals. However, as protesters, this generation expressed their discontent and skillful use of social media. You rapidly organized, galvanized, and educated the masses on important human rights issues. Please give yourselves a round of applause for acting. It provided an opportunity for this generation to experience a slim challenge of what the young people were up against in previous generations. It provided an opportunity for this generation to recognize and appreciate the generation before you. It provides an opportunity to encourage this generation that you must take the baton and continue the legacy of those before you. That this generation must take it a step further, and I know you will, won't you?
Yes.
Good. My father sought solutions. He counseled smart to get results, smart action to get results. He cautioned against false moves, running in place, thinking one is making progress when the problem still exists 50 years later. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay, I want you to repeat after me. I am the future.
I am the future.
I honor my ancestors.
I honor my ancestors.
I stand on shoulders of greatness and strength.
I stand on shoulders of greatness and strength.
Can I just hear you just a little bit stronger, Mississippi?
Yes.
Shoulders of dynamic leaders.
Shoulders of dynamic leaders.
I am powerful.
I am powerful.
I will use my power to invest in myself.
I will use my power to invest in myself.
For the good of my people.
For the good of my people.
And for the good of my country.
And for the good of my country.
Thank you. People often ask me what it's like to be a daughter of Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz. I was raised understanding the importance of education and history, the importance of humanity, the importance of leadership, the importance of self-reliance, that I am my brother and sister's keeper, the importance of power. As a child, I recall watching my mother working in the cause of human rights. I remember her participating in the women's conference that was held in China shortly before she passed away. Writing Growing Up X afforded me an opportunity to reflect on her life as a source of inspiration and empowerment that I wanted very much to share with others. With 6 daughters, boys knocking on our door, and weekly episodes of Soul Train and Brady Bunch, this book is likely not what most expect of the family of Malcolm X. My mother was a young woman in her 20s, just a few years older than many of you here, when she witnessed the political assassination of her husband. 1 week prior, on Valentine's Day, a Molotov cocktail, which is a bomb, a Molotov cocktail was thrown into the nursery of my father and mother's home, where my sisters and I slept as babies. And this is why my father began staying in busy hotels, to keep the attacks away from his family, away from his young wife and children who were near and dear to his heart. When my father was finally killed, my mother was left traumatized, frightened, and alone. She was a young woman with 4 babies and pregnant with my youngest sisters, the twins. I've often asked myself, with 6 babies, widowed, and the wife of Malcolm X, the wife of a man who challenged a government that was historically unjust to its own people, how was this young woman, Sister Betty, able to overcome such a loss and so many obstacles, and still raise 6 daughters, and still dedicate her life to giving back to others, and still earn a master's degree, and get into her car once a week, my beloveds, to drive from our home in Mount Vernon, New York, to University of Massachusetts at Amherst and earn a PhD?
Yes.
How? She never accepted no, or I can't, as an answer for herself. Sister Betty survived because of her faith in God, and because she knew the importance of self-respect, self-esteem, and a quality education. She knew that if she didn't do it, she certainly was not going to sit back and wait for someone else to do it. She did it herself. And she raised 6 girls with the knowledge of history as a means to develop a healthy identity, self-respect, and with an understanding of our obligation to others. Forget about what they say, pulling your individual selves up by your own bootstrap. We must subscribe to the African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child, and each and every one of us here must advocate as a community. Now, how many of you have heard of the Jewish Holocaust? Can I see by a show of hands? And how many of you have heard of the African Holocaust? Okay. My father often talked about the parallel oppression of European Jews and the African diaspora. He said, Jewish people never lost pride in being Jewish. They knew they made a significant contribution to world history. They teach their children, and their children sit and listen to all of their history. It is absolutely so important. And it is the reason that we're in the condition that we're in today. They knew they made a significant contribution to history, and they vowed never to forget the horrific crimes committed against their humanity. And they teach their children at a young age all about their history. And they've evidently done a remarkable job by teaching the world, because this crime was committed in Europe and not in America, but yet all of us in here are aware of the European Jewish Holocaust. The Arab and transatlantic slave trades were the largest forced migration of a people in the history of mankind. And today, somehow, when it comes to Africa, blacks, and history, most of us are either clueless or we don't even care. And so we're relying on this generation to learn as much as you can, to have patience, to have compassion, and learn and empower the students to change this. My father said, when you teach a man, you teach a community, and when you teach a woman, you raise a nation. And gentlemen, I have to tell you that we need you. If we're going to prosper and survive in a healthy manner, we need you to see the true beauty in your woman, the role in caring for your women, the role in protecting your women. Otherwise, you leave us out there for the wolves, alone and rejected. I'd like to ask all the ladies to please stand.
Hold up, ladies. Let's go.
Young men, gentlemen, your ladies confront many challenges in their daily lives. And we need you to see yourselves in us. Your power and your strength are within us. We need you to protect us. We need you. Thank you, ladies. Men, please stand.
All right now. All right now.
Please repeat after me. Sisters, I got you.
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 Ladies, your men are here against many, 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 many challenges. I cannot emphasize enough. We must have patience with our men. Allow them to be men. We must build them up and hold them up high. Let's give them a round of applause.
Yes.
And sisters, let's tell them we salute you.
We salute you.
We salute you.
We salute you.
We are relying on you to be solid individuals, have solid relationships, and pick up the baton and continue to record history accurately. Together as a unit is the only way. And so it was a young Malcolm X who sought to end the devastation of human and natural resources caused by war and unequal distribution of the world's wealth, caused by the miseducation of black people and the rest of the world about the origin of civilization, about the origin of Africa and her significant contributions to world history. And if we don't know these things, we can't teach them, we can't change them. About her people, husbands and wives, fathers, mothers, and children, strong, solid, productive, supportive families. Brother Malcolm accepted the mantle of leadership in the human rights struggle because he understood the oneness of man, that no matter where we're from, Asia, Africa, Europe, no matter our gender or religion, that we're all brothers and sisters under the fatherhood and within the family of God. Brother Malcolm helped all Americans to understand the truth about the foundation of our society, that African people did not begin in slavery, but that the refined and industrious African men and women were the architects of civilizations whose monuments are being resurrected even until this day. And when they're resurrected, we do nothing. When other people start claiming our history, we do absolutely nothing about it. We just allow other people to do it. We can sit back and watch, and we do nothing about it. Malcolm challenged the status quo that it was the refined and industrious black African men who built those phenomenal pyramids, cities, and ships that archaeologists continue to uncover today. That they were not simply slaves before they were captured, but that they were refined and industrious African men and women with identities, families, and a value system that anchored and governed their livelihood. And that before the transatlantic slave trade, these African men and women were priests, scientists, architects. They were farmers, artists, dancers. They were fathers, mothers, neighbors. And they brought their culture, skills, and talents with them as enslaved African people under psychological duress. We owe them. Malcolm was compassionate. He was a student, a lover of books, an excellent teacher. And he stood tall to restore our identities and our commitments, to help us know that long before there was a Harvard or a Yale, in West Africa, there was the University of Timbuktu. Black African scholars conferred degrees to citizens of the world who specifically came to the continent for knowledge. How many of you here saw the documentary Prince Among Slaves? Okay, that's good. I was a project advisor for the award-winning PBS film that was narrated by Mos Def. Prince Abdul-Rahman was one of the most famous Africans ever captured in the history of the slave trade, and it was this gentleman's perspective that was documented in the 1700s. Prince Abdul-Rahman recounts his observation of this new land. What made it so important is because when we rely on what was it like and what were African people like, we're relying on someone else to tell us. And so this documentary was different because it documented a young man who was a prince in the true word. And it was his recollection of what Africa looked like and what this continent and what the United States was. He said that the United States was by no means comparable to the land in Africa from where he was kidnapped. As early as the 1700s, this great prince indicated that the United States was underdeveloped, that it was a pagan society, that the homes were poorly constructed by comparison to the structures built in Africa. In the 1700s, this great Prince Abdul-Rahman said that most Africans spoke 5 to 7 languages, that thriving cultures were based upon universal spirit and intellect, God and scholarship, morale and wisdom. And it was these African men, women, and children who were shipped from the first world to what would become the new world to cultivate a barren land under such psychological trauma. However, they survived. And today it is your duty to ensure that their enslavement was not in vain. In our journey toward justice, you must honor them. You must have patience and honor them. You must ensure history properly and accurately honors them. This is how nations construct and encourage a legacy of their people. And this is how we construct a mighty legacy of our own with intellect and morality. I pray that we will be fortified with the understanding that knowledge of accurate historical information prepares us for leadership in our homes. It prepares us for leadership in our communities and around the world. It fosters self-respect and then respect for others. It instills in us strength, compassion, and the ability to see right from wrong. And it reminds us of who we are at our core and all of what we can accomplish together, to be or not to be. As the future leaders of this new world, future leaders of this new world, are we in good hands?
Yeah.
Sitting back and waiting for someone else to do for us is no longer an option. With our talents, skills, and access, we must rely on ourselves to get the job done. When my father said education is our passport to the future and that tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today, we must study what he said. This is the time of your lives, young people. Come together with like minds, establish clubs, meeting groups, organizations, plan, strategize, organize, but you must execute. Accurate historical facts lead to a clear understanding that we cannot suppress another without oppressing ourselves, that we cannot come to the aid of another without helping ourselves. If we do not know history in its entirety, then our education is incomplete, and we and all the children following will continue to suffer the disorder of detachment, separation from history, disconnection from culture, rejection of heritage, and very likely a life without true passion, determination, and purpose. Wanting simply to be rich, not rich in service, not rich in helping anyone, but just rich. Amassing material possessions, relying on someone else to tell you of your worth without ever recognizing that you are the authentic jewel. We must truly prepare whole men and women coming together to honor yourselves 110% and fully answer the call to leadership and fulfill a more purposeful life. We must commit ourselves to building strong, safe, and respectable communities. Young men must protect and guide their women. I don't know why you don't know this, but all other men, they put their women up on billboards and they say, this is what beauty looks like. We need you to do the same so that your children can also feel great about who they are. And women will understand their role in nation building, ladies. You will reclaim your powerful legacy of which Brother Malcolm boasted, and demonstrate to the world and to the next generation that you too are the sons and daughters of promise, worthy of your greatness. You will stand tall, gleaming with pride alongside this generation of leaders whom are preparing you to take your place in history and define a legacy of your own as the new administrators, the new professors, the new authors, screenwriters, policymakers, artists, poets.
Yes.
As future leaders, when you're studying for your exam, do not simply memorize text or take classes just to pass. Study so you may do your very best. If your goal is to be a doctor, do not study medicine for social status, rather become a doctor to ensure that all people will have adequate health care. And if your goal is to be an attorney, become a lawyer so that you can fight all forms of injustice, make it matter, make it significant. And if you're committed to social justice, then whether you're a lawyer, doctor, politician, professor, black, white, tan, or pink, your purpose and service will be to improve upon and give back to society in some significant manner and define a legacy of your own. We will stand worthy to honor the Congolese Queen Nzinga, who was the greatest military strategist in the year of the 1600s that ever confronted the armed forces of Portugal against Angola. Her aim was the total destruction of the slave trade in the 1600s. We will stand worthy together to say thank you to Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Stephen Biko, and Nelson Mandela. It is your responsibility to know who these people are so you can record history properly. We will stand together worthy to honor Toussaint Louverture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who as African revolutionary generals and their brothers and sisters in bondage took a stance in the 1800s and overthrew their oppressors and claimed their freedom and land in Haiti. We will stand together here in the U.S. to honor Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner, W.E.B. Du Bois, Medgar Evers, Fannie Lou, Dr. Martin King Jr., who challenged injustice because there is a war going on if you didn't know that.
That's right.
We will stand worthy with the great historians, Carter G. Woodson, John Henry Clark, Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, J.A. Rogers, all who understood the importance of preserving history to empower you. Let us stand worthy and honor El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, Brother Malcolm, Malcolm X, and all of the nameless American past laborers so that we could be here today to follow in their footsteps of principle and service and make our lives truly matter. And as we contribute to the power of leadership that is within each and every one of you, may you truly emulate the wisdom, courage, and purpose of the legacy before you to produce the best in yourselves that mankind can offer. Because you come from greatness. We will honor ourselves as we also prepare the next generation, because you have to pass it on to the generation that comes after you. by setting examples of truth and leadership, just as those who labored before you, and I promise in that manner your blessings will reign forever. Thank you very much.